Hello, and welcome to the Drowsy Professor. I'm so glad you're here tonight, ready to journey back through time to discover one of humanity's most remarkable stories of resilience and adaptation. As you settle in, let me know where in the world and at what time you're watching. Now, get comfortable. Adjust your pillows, pull up your blankets, and take a slow, deep breath. Tonight, we'll explore how our ancestors survived what may have been the longest winter in human history. A gentle tale of patience, cooperation, and the quiet strength that has always defined our species. Take another breath, and let's begin. Imagine, if you will, stepping back through time to a world that existed 74,000 years ago, during what scientists call the late Pleistocene period. The Earth you would find yourself on is both familiar and wonderfully different from the world we know today. The continents rest in nearly the same positions they occupy now. The ocean currents flow in patterns we would recognize, and the fundamental rhythms of seasons and weather continue much as they do in our modern era. Yet this ancient world pulses with a different kind of life, a slower and more intimate relationship between humans and a natural environment that has sustained them for countless generations. The climate of this ancient Earth is locked in the embrace of an ice age, though not at its coldest point. Massive ice sheets stretch across northern Europe and much of what will one day be Canada, their pale surfaces reflecting sunlight back to space and maintaining the cool, stable temperatures that have characterized this epoch for thousands of years. Yet between these icy realms lie vast expanses of grassland, woodland, and tropical forest that teem with life in abundance and diversity that would astound a modern observer. The air itself carries different qualities than what we breathe today. It is cleaner, free from the industrial pollutants that will characterize later eras, yet also thinner in some ways, with slightly different concentrations of gases that reflect the massive carbon storage locked away in the great ice sheets and the different patterns of vegetation that cover the continents. When you breathe this ancient air, it fills your lungs with a crispness that speaks of vast open spaces and the gentle circulation patterns of an atmosphere undisturbed by human industry. The human populations that inhabit this ancient world are small and scattered, perhaps numbering only in the tens of thousands across the entire planet. These early modern humans, our direct ancestors, live in intimate bands of 20 to 50 individuals, moving seasonally across landscapes they know with extraordinary detail and precision. Their knowledge of the natural world around them is encyclopedic, passed down through countless generations of careful observation and accumulated wisdom about the rhythms and patterns that govern survival in this ancient environment. These early human communities have developed remarkable technologies for their time, though they would appear simple to modern eyes. They craft sophisticated stone tools with techniques that require years to master, tools that serve dozens of different purposes from hunting and food preparation to hide processing and woodworking. Their mastery of fire has progressed far beyond mere survival necessity, becoming a central organizing principle of their daily lives that provides warmth, protection, cooking capability, and a social focus around which community life revolves each evening. The clothing worn by these ancient people represents thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about working with animal hides and plant fibers. They have learned to create garments that provide excellent protection against cold and wet weather while remaining flexible enough for the active lifestyle demanded by their hunting and gathering existence. The techniques they use for tanning hides, sewing seams, and creating waterproof barriers demonstrate an intimate understanding of material science that rivals many modern applications. The shelters constructed by these early humans show remarkable adaptation to local environments and seasonal requirements. In forested areas, they build frameworks of wooden poles covered with carefully prepared animal hides that can be erected quickly as the band moves to new locations. In areas where suitable caves are available, they modify these natural shelters with windbreaks, fire hearths, and sleeping areas that maximize comfort and protection while maintaining the ability to move when resources in the area become depleted. The social organization of these early human groups reflects the fundamental cooperation that has always characterized our species. Leadership tends to be situational and consensual, with different individuals taking primary responsibility for different aspects of group survival based on their particular skills and knowledge. Decision-making processes emphasize discussion and agreement rather than authoritarian control, creating social structures that are remarkably resilient and adaptive to changing circumstances. The daily rhythms of life in these ancient communities follow patterns that are closely synchronized with natural cycles. People rise with the sun and settle into sleep shortly after darkness falls, though the social time around the evening fire often extends well into the night during favorable weather. The activities of each day are organized around the practical requirements of survival, but they also include time for social interaction, skill development, storytelling, and the maintenance of the complex relationships that bind the community together. The food systems that sustain these early humans demonstrate remarkable knowledge of local ecosystems and seasonal patterns. They have identified hundreds of different plant species that provide nutrition, medicine, and raw materials, and they know precisely when and where to find each species throughout the annual cycle. Their hunting techniques have been refined over millennia to take advantage of animal behavior patterns and migration routes, allowing them to harvest protein efficiently while maintaining sustainable populations of game animals. The gathering activities that provide the majority of calories for most groups require detailed knowledge of plant phenology, soil conditions, and ecological relationships. Women and children often specialize in these gathering activities, developing expertise that enables them to locate and harvest plant resources with remarkable efficiency. The processing techniques they use to prepare plant foods often involve complex procedures that remove toxins, improve digestibility, and enable long-term storage of seasonal surpluses. The tool-making traditions that characterize these early human groups represent one of their most sophisticated technological achievements. The production of stone tools requires not only technical skill, but also detailed knowledge of geology, an understanding of how different rock types fracture and behave under pressure. The best toolmakers in each group are often held in high regard, and their knowledge is carefully passed down to younger generations through years of patient instruction and practice. The artistic and symbolic expressions that emerge from these early human communities provide glimpses into rich inner lives and complex belief systems. They create personal ornaments from shells, teeth, and carved bone that serve as markers of identity and social relationships. Their cave paintings and rock engravings, while not yet widespread, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of color, composition, and the symbolic representation of important animals and landscape features. The languages spoken by these early humans are fully modern in their complexity and expressiveness, though they leave no written records for us to study. These languages carry within them detailed vocabularies for describing natural phenomena, social relationships, and technical procedures that reflect the sophisticated knowledge systems these people have developed. The oral traditions maintained by these communities serve as libraries of ecological knowledge, historical information, and cultural wisdom that enable each generation to build upon the accumulated learning of their ancestors. The spiritual and ceremonial aspects of life in these early communities often center around the recognition of sacred relationships between humans and the natural world that sustains them. These belief systems typically emphasize reciprocity, respect, and the careful maintenance of balance between human needs and the health of the ecosystems upon which they depend. Ceremonial activities often mark important transitions in individual lives and seasonal cycles, strengthening social bonds while reinforcing cultural values and ecological knowledge. The trade relationships that connect different human groups across vast distances demonstrate the existence of complex social networks that span entire continents. Materials like high-quality stone for tool-making, shells for decoration, and specialized resources like ochre for body painting move along these trade routes, carried by individuals who travel hundreds of miles to maintain relationships with distant groups. These trade networks serve not only economic functions, but also facilitate the exchange of ideas, techniques, and genetic diversity that help maintain the health and adaptability of human populations. The seasonal movements that characterize the lifestyle of these early humans follow patterns that have been established over countless generations of trial and refinement. Each group follows annual routes that take advantage of seasonal resource availability while avoiding areas during times when food is scarce or weather conditions are particularly challenging. These movement patterns demonstrate intimate knowledge of landscape ecology and represent a form of sustainable resource management that maintains the productivity of ecosystems while meeting human needs. The child-rearing practices of these early communities emphasize the gradual acquisition of survival skills through observation, imitation, and guided practice. Children begin learning essential techniques at very young ages, but they do so in contexts that emphasize play, exploration, and gradual assumption of responsibility rather than formal instruction or rigid discipline. This educational approach produces adults who are highly skilled, confident, and adaptable to changing circumstances. The healthcare knowledge possessed by these early humans includes sophisticated understanding of medicinal plants, injury treatment, and basic surgical procedures. They have identified numerous plant species with pharmaceutical properties and developed techniques for preparing and administering these medicines. Their knowledge of anatomy, gained through hunting and food processing activities, enables them to treat injuries and illnesses with surprising effectiveness using only natural materials and careful observation of patient responses. The elderly members of these early human communities are valued repositories of knowledge and wisdom whose experience spans many decades of environmental variation and cultural change. Their memories preserve information about rare events, unusual weather patterns, and the locations of resources that may only be available during specific conditions. The respect accorded to elderly community members reflects the practical value of their accumulated knowledge, as well as cultural values that emphasize the importance of all community members regardless of their current physical capabilities. The environmental conditions that prevail during this period provide abundant resources and relatively stable climate patterns that support sustainable human populations without requiring intensive resource management. The vast grasslands that characterize much of the landscape support enormous herds of grazing animals, while the extensive forests and woodlands provide diverse plant resources and habitat for numerous species that serve as human food sources. The megafauna that share this ancient world with early humans include species of remarkable size and diversity that will become extinct by the end of the Pleistocene epoch. Woolly mammoths roam the grasslands in vast herds, their presence helping to maintain the open habitats that support diverse plant and animal communities. Giant ground sloths, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats inhabit forests and caves, while enormous birds and marine reptiles populate coastal and aquatic environments. The plant communities that characterize this ancient world include many species that will survive in modern times, as well as others that will disappear along with the climatic conditions that favor them. The grasslands support vast expanses of nutritious grasses and forbs that provide food for both human gathering and the herbivorous animals that form an important part of human diet. The forests contain diverse mixtures of deciduous and coniferous trees that provide nuts, fruits, and other plant resources, as well as habitat for game animals. As you observe this ancient world in all its abundance and stability, you begin to sense that it represents a kind of equilibrium between human populations and natural systems that has been maintained for thousands of years. The people who inhabit this world have learned to live within the productive capacity of their environments, developing technologies and social systems that meet their needs without degrading the ecosystems that sustain them. The pace of life in this ancient world moves according to natural rhythms rather than artificial schedules, creating a temporal environment that emphasizes patient observation, careful planning, and the gradual accumulation of knowledge and resources. Days unfold according to the requirements of survival and the opportunities presented by weather and season, while longer-term planning follows the predictable cycles of climate and resource availability that have characterized this world for millennia. The sense of security that characterizes this ancient world derives not from control over the environment, but from intimate knowledge of its patterns and processes. These early humans understand their world so thoroughly that they can anticipate its changes, prepare for its challenges, and take advantage of its opportunities with confidence born of generations of successful adaptation to local conditions. Yet even in this stable and abundant world, there are subtle signs that change is coming. Volcanic activity in distant parts of the world occasionally sends ash clouds across the sky that create spectacular sunsets and slightly cooler temperatures for brief periods. Seasonal patterns sometimes shift in small ways that require adjustments to traditional timing for resource gathering or migration routes. The climate system that has maintained stable conditions for so long continues to operate according to its own vast rhythms, and those rhythms are about to enter a new phase that will test the resilience and adaptability of all life on Earth, including the small human populations that call this ancient world home. Far to the southeast of most human settlements, in what will one day be called Sumatra, lies a region of extraordinary natural beauty where ancient mountains rise from tropical forests in gentle slopes that seem to touch the clouds themselves. The landscape here pulses with the deep, slow rhythms of geological time, where volcanic peaks stand as silent sentinels over valleys filled with some of the most diverse and abundant life on Earth. Among these peaks, one mountain has been quietly preparing for an event that will reshape the entire planet, though its preparations have been so gradual and peaceful that they have gone unnoticed by the small human populations who occasionally traverse these verdant highlands. This mountain, which future scientists will call Toba, appears to most observers as a place of remarkable tranquility and beauty. Its slopes are covered with dense tropical forests that harbor countless species of plants and animals, while crystal-clear streams flow down its flanks, carrying the mineral-rich waters that support flourishing ecosystems in the valleys below. The local climate around Toba is warm and humid year-round, with gentle rainfall that nourishes the abundant vegetation and maintains the lush, green paradise that characterizes this corner of the ancient world. The geological processes that have been building toward this moment began thousands of years earlier, operating with the same patient persistence that characterizes all of Earth's deep processes. Far beneath the mountain, at depths of many miles below the surface, chambers of molten rock have been slowly accumulating, fed by the gradual melting of crustal materials as tectonic forces bring different rock types into contact with the intense heat of the Earth's interior. This magma chamber has been growing larger and more complex over millennia, developing the chemical compositions and internal pressures that will eventually drive one of the most significant volcanic events in recent geological history. The signs of impending change, when they finally begin to appear, are so subtle that they blend seamlessly into the natural rhythms of this volcanic landscape. Small earthquakes, barely perceptible to human senses, begin to occur more frequently as the growing magma chamber adjusts to its increasing size and internal pressure. These tiny tremors create vibrations that travel through the ground like whispers, felt more by the sensitive root systems of trees than by any human inhabitants who might happen to be in the area. The hot springs that the landscape around Toba begin to show slight changes in their temperature and mineral content as the deep magmatic processes modify the chemistry of groundwater systems. These changes occur so gradually that they might be attributed to normal seasonal variations or slight shifts in underground water flow patterns. The springs continue to provide the same warm, mineral-rich waters that have supported local ecosystems for thousands of years, though careful observers might notice that some pools have become slightly warmer or that certain minerals appear in different concentrations than they have in the past. The forest communities that thrive on Toba's slopes begin to experience subtle changes that reflect the slowly intensifying geological activity beneath their roots. Some tree species show slightly altered growth patterns, with root systems that penetrate less deeply into soils that have become gradually warmer due to increased heat flow from below. Certain plants that are particularly sensitive to soil chemistry begin to show minor changes in their leaf color or flowering times, responding to the barely detectable modifications in soil mineral content caused by the deep magmatic processes. The animal populations that inhabit the forests around Toba display behaviors that suggest they are responding to environmental changes that remain largely imperceptible to human senses. Some bird species alter their nesting locations slightly, avoiding areas where ground temperatures have increased by fractions of a degree. Small mammals modify their burrowing patterns, instinctively avoiding soils that have become less stable due to the minor structural changes occurring deep underground. The weather patterns around Toba begin to show subtle modifications as the increasing heat from below affects local atmospheric circulation in almost imperceptible ways. Cloud formation patterns shift slightly, with certain areas experiencing marginally different precipitation timing or intensity. These changes are so minor that they fall well within the range of normal weather variation. Yet they represent the first atmospheric responses to the geological transformation taking place beneath the mountain. As months and then years pass, the geological processes beneath Toba continue their slow intensification, building toward an event that will require very specific conditions to trigger its occurrence. The magma chamber continues to grow and evolve, developing internal pressures and chemical compositions that gradually approach the critical thresholds necessary for a major eruption. The process unfolds according to the deep-time rhythms of geological evolution, where significant changes accumulate over periods that span many human lifetimes. The tectonic stresses that surround the Toba region begin to shift in subtle ways as the expanding magma chamber affects the structural stability of the surrounding crustal rocks. These stress changes manifest as minor modifications in the patterns of small earthquakes that occur throughout the region, though the overall seismic activity remains well within the range of normal variation for this volcanically active area. The changes would be detectable only by instruments far more sensitive than any available to the ancient human populations of the time. The geochemical signatures of volcanic gases begin to appear in increased concentrations around Toba, though these changes remain largely confined to the immediate vicinity of the mountain and occur at levels that pose no immediate threat to local ecosystems. These gases, primarily carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds, emerge from the ground through natural soil processes and dissolve into groundwater systems, creating minor modifications in local environmental chemistry that represent harbingers of the much larger changes to come. The deep magmatic processes that drive these surface changes operate according to principles of physics and chemistry that ensure the transformation occurs gradually rather than catastrophically. The molten rock within the magma chamber undergoes continuous chemical evolution as different mineral components crystallize and separate, while the overall temperature and pressure conditions change slowly in response to the ongoing addition of new magmatic material from even deeper sources within the Earth. The crystal structure of the magma develops characteristics that will ultimately determine the nature of the eventual eruption. As the molten rock cools slightly and different minerals begin to form within it, the magma develops a composition that will allow it to retain large quantities of dissolved gases under pressure. This chemical evolution occurs over timescales measured in centuries and millennia, creating the conditions necessary for the spectacular but gentle volcanic event that lies ahead. The regional ecosystem around Toba continues to thrive despite the ongoing geological changes, demonstrating the remarkable resilience of tropical forest communities to gradual environmental modification. The abundant rainfall and warm temperatures that characterize this region continue to support diverse plant and animal communities that show remarkable adaptability to the slowly changing conditions. Many species actually benefit from the increased mineral content in soils and water sources that results from the enhanced volcanic activity. The human populations that occasionally travel through the Toba region during this period of geological preparation notice very little change in the landscape or environmental conditions. The mountain continues to appear as a stable and benevolent presence in the landscape, providing the same resources and ecological services that have characterized this region for thousands of years. Any changes that might be noticeable fall well within the range of normal environmental variation that experienced travelers expect to encounter in different seasons and years. The seasonal cycles that govern life in the tropical forests around Toba continue to operate according to their established patterns, though with subtle modifications that reflect the slowly changing environmental conditions. Flowering and fruiting cycles of forest plants may shift by days or weeks in response to minor changes in soil temperature or moisture availability, while animal reproduction and migration patterns show corresponding adjustments that maintain the overall stability of ecosystem function. The atmospheric conditions around Toba begin to show the first hints of the changes that will eventually affect global climate patterns, though these early signs remain localized and subtle. Slightly increased emissions of volcanic gases begin to affect local air quality in barely detectable ways, while minor changes in surface heating patterns create small modifications in local wind and precipitation patterns that remain well within the range of normal weather variation. The chemical composition of lake and stream waters in the Toba region begins to show gradual changes that reflect the increasing influence of volcanic processes on local hydrology. These changes occur slowly enough that aquatic ecosystems have time to adjust to the modified water chemistry, with most species showing remarkable adaptability to the gradually changing conditions. The overall productivity and diversity of aquatic communities remains stable despite these ongoing chemical modifications. The soil development processes that operate in the Toba region begin to show subtle changes as increased heat flow from below affects the rates of chemical weathering and organic matter decomposition. These changes generally enhance soil fertility and nutrient availability, supporting continued forest growth and ecosystem productivity even as the underlying geological conditions continue to evolve toward the critical thresholds that will trigger major volcanic activity. The magnetic properties of rocks in the Toba region begin to show minor modifications as the intense heat and chemical activity associated with the growing magma chamber affect the magnetic minerals contained in surrounding crustal rocks. These changes are far too subtle to affect navigation or animal behavior, but they represent part of the complex suite of geological modifications that accompany the development of major volcanic systems. The thermal structure of the Toba region undergoes gradual modification as heat flow from the expanding magma chamber begins to affect ground temperatures at increasingly shallow depths. These temperature changes remain small enough that they do not significantly affect surface ecosystems, but they represent the early stages of the thermal processes that will eventually drive the major volcanic event that lies ahead. The gravitational field in the Toba region begins to show minute variations as the density distribution within the Earth's crust changes in response to the growing magma chamber. These changes are far too small to affect any biological processes or human activities, but they represent part of the complex geophysical signature that accompanies the development of major volcanic systems within the Earth's crust. As the final preparations for the Great Eruption continue to unfold over decades and centuries, the Toba system gradually approaches the critical conditions necessary for the release of the enormous quantities of energy that have been slowly accumulating in the deep magma chamber. The process continues to operate according to the patient rhythms of geological time, building steadily toward an event that will demonstrate both the awesome power of natural forces and the remarkable gentleness with which even the most significant geological events can unfold. The triggering mechanisms that will eventually initiate the major volcanic event remain poised in delicate equilibrium, waiting for the precise combination of internal pressure, chemical composition, and structural conditions that will allow the controlled release of the enormous energies that have been building within the Earth's crust. The final approach to this critical threshold occurs with the same gradual patience that has characterized the entire process, ensuring that when the eruption finally begins, it will unfold in ways that demonstrate the fundamental orderliness and predictability of geological processes. The ecosystem communities around Toba continue to display the vibrant abundance and diversity that have characterized this region throughout the long period of geological preparation. The forests remain lush and productive. The streams continue to flow clear and mineral-rich, and the complex web of interactions between plants and animals continues to function according to the established patterns that have sustained these communities for millennia. The mountain itself continues to appear as a benevolent and stable presence in the landscape, its slopes covered with the same dense forests and crystal streams that have always characterized this corner of the tropical world. The atmospheric conditions around Toba maintain the warm, humid characteristics that have supported tropical forest ecosystems throughout the long period of volcanic development. The gentle rainfall that nourishes the abundant vegetation continues to fall according to seasonal patterns that remain predictable and reliable, while the warm temperatures that support year-round plant growth show only the minor variations that characterize normal weather cycles in tropical regions. The final stages of preparation for the Great Eruption unfold with the same peaceful patience that has characterized the entire process, as the deep geological forces that will soon reshape the global environment continue their slow approach toward the critical thresholds that will trigger one of the most significant volcanic events in recent Earth history. The mountain stands ready to demonstrate both the awesome creative power of geological processes and the remarkable gentleness with which even the most transformative natural events can unfold when they operate according to the deep rhythms of Earth's internal systems. When a moment finally arrives for Toba to release the enormous energies that have been building within its depths for thousands of years, the eruption begins not with violence or catastrophe, but with a gentle awakening that unfolds like the most natural thing in the world. The initial stages of the eruption are so peaceful that they might be mistaken for normal volcanic activity, the kind of mild steam emission and gas release that characterizes many volcanic systems around the world. Yet this gentle beginning represents the opening movement of an event that will eventually demonstrate the remarkable power of geological processes to reshape global environments through patient, persistent action rather than sudden destruction. The first materials to emerge from Toba are clouds of steam and volcanic gases that rise slowly and majestically into the tropical sky above Sumatra. These initial emissions create pillars of white vapor that climb steadily upward through the warm, humid atmosphere, carrying with them the chemical signatures of the deep Earth processes that have been building toward this moment for millennia. The gases rise with dignity and grace, following the natural patterns of atmospheric circulation as they begin their journey into the upper atmosphere, where they will eventually spread around the globe. As the eruption continues to develop over hours and days, the character of the volcanic emissions gradually evolves from simple steam and gas to include increasing quantities of fine volcanic ash. This ash consists of tiny particles of volcanic glass and rock that have been created by the explosive interaction between the hot magma and the water-rich environment surrounding the volcanic vent. The ash particles are so small that they behave almost like a fluid, rising high into the atmosphere where they form dense clouds that spread outward in all directions from the volcanic source. The ash clouds that emerge from Toba display a remarkable beauty as they climb through the layers of the atmosphere, their gray and white colors contrasting elegantly with the deep blue of the tropical sky. These clouds rise with the same stately progression that characterizes all volcanic emissions, following the physical laws that govern fluid dynamics and atmospheric circulation. As they rise higher, the ash clouds begin to spread laterally, forming the characteristic mushroom shape that develops when dense materials encounter the stable layers of the upper atmosphere. The fine ash particles that make up these volcanic clouds are so light that they can remain suspended in the atmosphere for extended periods, riding the air currents like microscopic travelers embarking on a global journey. The smallest particles, those measured in micrometers rather than millimeters, have a remarkable ability to travel thousands of miles while remaining aloft, carried by the jet streams and other high-altitude wind systems that circle the Earth. These tiny messengers from Toba will eventually visit every corner of the planet, bringing with them the chemical signature of this ancient volcanic event. The initial ash fall that occurs in the immediate vicinity of Toba descends like a gentle snow, coating the tropical landscape with a fine gray powder that transforms the familiar greens and browns of the forest into a monochromatic wonderland. The ash falls silently, accumulating on leaves and branches, on the surface of streams and lakes, and on the ground where it begins to form a soft carpet that muffles sound and creates an atmosphere of profound quietude. The falling ash particles catch the sunlight as they descend, creating millions of tiny sparkles that dance through the air like glitter falling from the sky. The texture of the volcanic ash is remarkably fine, almost like powder or flour, and it has a strange quality of being both light and substantial at the same time. When it first begins to fall, individual particles are barely visible, but they accumulate with surprising speed to create layers that can be measured in inches and then feet. The ash has a slightly warm quality when it first lands, carrying with it some of the heat from the volcanic processes that created it, though it quickly cools to ambient temperature as it settles into the landscape. The color of the ash varies subtly depending on the specific mineral composition of the volcanic materials from which it was formed. Most of it appears as various shades of gray, from light silver gray to darker charcoal tones, but under certain lighting conditions, it can show hints of brown, tan, or even pale yellow. When wet, the ash takes on a darker appearance and develops a clay-like consistency that can be molded and shaped, though it lacks the plasticity of true clay and tends to remain somewhat gritty to the touch. As the eruption continues over days and weeks, the ash clouds that emerge from Toba grow larger and more voluminous, eventually reaching heights of many miles above the Earth's surface. At these altitudes, the ash encounters the stratosphere, the stable layer of the atmosphere that lies above most weather systems. Once the ash reaches the stratosphere, it spreads outward much more rapidly, following the high-altitude wind patterns that can carry materials around the entire planet in a matter of weeks. The meteorological effects of the ash clouds become apparent first in the immediate region around Toba, where the dense concentration of particles in the atmosphere begins to filter and scatter sunlight in unusual ways. The sun, when visible through the ash clouds, takes on a pale, diffused appearance, its normal bright yellow color muted to a gentle orange or red that creates an otherworldly quality to the daylight. During sunrise and sunset, the sky displays spectacular colors as the sunlight interacts with the ash particles to create deep reds, oranges, and purples that paint the heavens with an artist's palette of volcanic hues. The ash clouds that spread outward from Toba follow the prevailing wind patterns of the tropical atmosphere, initially moving westward across the Indian Ocean before being caught up in the larger circulation patterns that distribute materials around the globe. The movement of these ash clouds can be tracked by their effects on local weather and visibility, as they create a moving shadow that gradually expands to cover larger and larger areas of the Earth's surface. In the regions where the ash clouds first arrive, hundreds and then thousands of miles from the volcanic source, the initial effects are surprisingly gentle and gradual. The sky takes on a slightly hazy appearance, as if a thin layer of high clouds has moved in to filter the sunlight. The air quality remains breathable, though sensitive individuals might notice a slight dryness or a barely detectable mineral taste that reflects the presence of volcanic particles in the atmosphere. The ash fall that begins to occur in these distant regions starts as an almost imperceptible dusting, so fine that it might be mistaken for ordinary dust or sand carried by normal wind patterns. The particles are so small that they settle slowly, taking hours to fall from the sky to the ground, and they accumulate so gradually that the change in the landscape is barely noticeable from day to day. Yet over time, this gentle accumulation creates a thin coating of volcanic ash that covers everything with a fine gray powder. The wildlife in these affected regions responds to the ash fall with remarkable adaptability, demonstrating the resilience of natural systems to gradual environmental change. Birds continue their normal activities, though they may show some preferences for areas where ash accumulation is lighter or where water sources remain relatively clear. Mammals exhibit minimal changes in behavior, though those with sensitive respiratory systems, may seek shelter in caves or dense forest areas where the air contains fewer suspended particles. The plant communities in ash-affected areas show varied responses to the volcanic dust that settles on their leaves and branches. Most vegetation tolerates the ash coating quite well, as the particles are fine enough that they do not significantly interfere with photosynthesis or gas exchange. Some plants actually benefit from the mineral content of the ash, which contains nutrients that can enhance growth once the particles are washed into the soil by rainfall. The aquatic ecosystems in regions receiving ash fall show remarkable resilience to the gradual addition of volcanic particles to their water systems. The fine ash tends to settle slowly to the bottom of lakes and streams, where it forms thin layers of sediment that actually help to preserve a detailed record of the volcanic event. Fish and other aquatic organisms show little immediate response to the presence of ash in their environment. The water clarity may be reduced temporarily in areas where ash concentrations are highest. The human populations who witness the arrival of volcanic ash in their regions respond with the careful observation and practical adaptation that characterizes their relationship with all environmental phenomena. They quickly learn to recognize the signs of approaching ash clouds and develop simple techniques for protecting themselves and their possessions from the accumulating dust. Shelters are modified to reduce air infiltration. Food supplies are covered to prevent contamination, and daily activities are adjusted to minimize exposure to the finest airborne particles. The ash that accumulates in human living areas is found to have some useful properties that resourceful individuals quickly learn to exploit. When mixed with water, the ash forms a paste that can be used for various purposes, from sealing gaps in shelters to creating temporary pottery-like vessels. The mineral content of the ash makes it useful as an abrasive for cleaning tools and hides, while its fine texture allows it to be used as a component in various crafting activities. The preservation qualities of volcanic ash become apparent as food items that are buried in the fine particles are found to remain fresh longer than those exposed to normal air. This discovery leads to the development of simple food storage techniques that take advantage of the ash's ability to exclude moisture and air while providing some protection against insects and other pests. The tracking and navigation skills that are so important to human survival in this ancient world must be adapted to account for the way that volcanic ash obscures familiar landmarks and trail markers. Experienced travelers learn to read the landscape through the ash coating, using their deep knowledge of terrain and vegetation patterns to maintain their orientation even when visual cues are muted by the gray covering that now blankets the familiar world. The seasonal cycles that govern human activities must be adjusted to account for the altered environmental conditions created by the ash fall. The timing of plant gathering may need to be modified as ash coating affects the appearance and accessibility of traditional food sources. Hunting activities require adaptation to the changed behavior patterns of game animals and the altered acoustic properties of landscapes covered with sound-absorbing ash. The social and cultural responses to the ash fall demonstrate the remarkable adaptability of human communities to unusual environmental conditions. The shared experience of witnessing and adapting to the volcanic phenomenon strengthens social bonds and creates new stories and traditions that will be passed down through generations. The ash fall becomes incorporated into the collective memory of affected groups as a significant environmental event that tested and demonstrated their resilience and adaptability. The cleaning and maintenance activities that are part of daily life in these ancient communities must be intensified and modified to deal with the persistent accumulation of fine ash particles. Tools and weapons require more frequent cleaning to maintain their effectiveness, while clothing and bedding need regular attention to remove the dust that seems to penetrate into everything despite the best efforts to keep it out. The fire-making and fire maintenance activities that are so central to human survival show some interesting interactions with the volcanic ash environment. The fine particles can sometimes interfere with fire starting if they coat tinder and kindling materials, but they can also help to bank fires and maintain coals for extended periods when used properly. Experienced fire tenders learn to work with the ash rather than against it, incorporating it into their fire management techniques. As weeks pass and the ash continues to fall in varying intensities across the affected regions, the cumulative effects of the volcanic event begin to create more noticeable changes in the environment. The layer of ash that covers the landscape grows thicker, reaching depths that begin to affect the normal functioning of ecosystems and human activities. Yet even these more substantial changes occur gradually enough that adaptation remains possible for most forms of life. The global circulation patterns that carry volcanic ash around the planet ensure that the effects of the Toba eruption eventually reach every inhabited continent, though the intensity of ashfall varies considerably depending on distance from the source and local atmospheric conditions. The ash serves as a worldwide messenger, carrying the chemical signature of this single volcanic event to human populations who have no knowledge of its distant source, but who must nonetheless adapt to its environmental effects. The atmospheric chemistry changes that accompany the global distribution of volcanic ash begin to create the conditions that will eventually lead to the significant climate effects associated with major volcanic eruptions. The fine particles suspended in the stratosphere begin to affect the way that sunlight interacts with the atmosphere, creating the foundation for the gradual cooling that will characterize the months and years following the eruption. As you observe this remarkable global phenomenon unfolding with such patience and grace, you begin to appreciate how even the most significant volcanic events operate according to natural laws that emphasize gradual change rather than sudden catastrophe. The ash that falls like snow across vast regions of the Earth carries with it both the power and the gentleness of geological processes, demonstrating how the planet's internal forces can reshape global environments through persistent, patient action that allows lifetime to adapt and survive. As the weeks and months pass following the initial ash fall from Toba, a new and more profound transformation begins to manifest itself across the Earth's atmosphere and climate systems. The countless billions of tiny volcanic particles that have been distributed throughout the stratosphere begin to create an atmospheric veil that gradually alters the fundamental relationship between our planet and the sunlight that has sustained all life for billions of years. What emerges is not a sudden plunge into darkness, but rather the most gentle and gradual dimming of daylight that unfolds so slowly that each day seems almost normal, even as the cumulative effect create a fundamentally different world. The first signs of this atmospheric transformation appear as subtle changes in the quality of sunlight that reaches the Earth's surface. The sun, which has always been a brilliant yellow-white disk in the clear sky, begins to take on a softer, more diffused appearance as it shines through the thin but persistent layer of volcanic particles suspended in the upper atmosphere. The intense brightness that can make it painful to look directly at the sun gradually diminishes, allowing observers to gaze at the solar disk for brief periods without the usual discomfort, though it still retains enough intensity to warm the face and hands. The color temperature of sunlight slowly shifts as the volcanic particles preferentially scatter certain wavelengths, while allowing others to pass through more easily. The brilliant whites and yellows that characterize normal daylight gradually take on warmer tones, with an increasing prevalence of oranges and reds that give the entire landscape a gentle, golden quality reminiscent of the hour before sunset. This change occurs so gradually that it might not be noticed from day to day, but over weeks and months, the difference becomes unmistakable to those who remember the brightness of the world before the ash began to fall. The shadows cast by trees, rocks, and other objects begin to show a softer, less defined quality as the diffused sunlight creates more even illumination across landscapes. The sharp contrast between bright sunlight and deep shadow that characterizes normal weather conditions gradually gives way to a more uniform distribution of light that reduces glare while creating a gentler, more peaceful visual environment. This diffused lighting has an almost magical quality, making colors appear richer and more saturated while reducing the harsh contrast that can make outdoor activities challenging during the brightest parts of the day. The temperature effects of the reduced solar radiation manifest themselves slowly and gently, beginning with barely perceptible changes in the daily temperature cycles that govern life throughout the affected regions. The warmest parts of the day become slightly less warm, while the coolest periods show corresponding but modest decreases that initially fall well within the range of normal weather variation. These changes occur so gradually that they blend seamlessly into the natural fluctuations that characterize all climate systems, making them difficult to distinguish from ordinary seasonal or yearly variations. The length of the growing season for plants begins to show subtle modifications as the reduced light levels and slightly cooler temperatures affect the timing of biological processes. Some plants that depend on precise photoperiod cues for flowering and fruiting show minor delays in their reproductive cycles, while others display enhanced cold tolerance that allows them to remain active later into what would normally be their dormant season. These adaptations occur gradually enough that most plant communities maintain their overall productivity and health despite the changing environmental conditions. The atmospheric circulation patterns that distribute heat around the planet begin to respond to the altered energy balance created by the volcanic particles. The reduced heating of the Earth's surface leads to subtle changes in the pressure gradients that drive wind systems, creating minor modifications in storm tracks and precipitation patterns. These changes are initially so small that they are masked by normal weather variability, but they represent the beginning of a systematic shift in global climate patterns that will become more apparent as time passes. The hydrological cycle that governs the movement of water through the Earth's systems shows gradual adaptations to the changing atmospheric conditions. Evaporation rates decrease slightly as reduced solar heating limits the energy available for converting liquid water into vapor, while the cooler temperatures create conditions that favor increased humidity and cloud formation in some regions. These changes in the water cycle occur slowly enough that most ecosystems can adjust their water use patterns without experiencing significant stress. The ocean systems that cover most of the Earth's surface begin to show subtle responses to the altered atmospheric conditions as reduced solar heating affects sea surface temperatures and evaporation rates. The massive thermal inertia of the oceans means that these changes occur very slowly, taking months or years to become fully apparent, but they represent important long-term modifications in the global climate system that will influence weather patterns around the world. The ice and snow systems in polar and high-elevation regions begin to show enhanced stability as the reduced solar radiation decreases melting rates during what would normally be the warmest parts of the year. Glaciers and ice sheets experience slightly reduced summer melting, while snow cover persists longer into the spring season in many regions. These changes occur gradually enough that they represent adaptations rather than disruptions to the seasonal cycles that govern life in cold climates. The biological productivity of ecosystems around the world begins to show subtle modifications as plants and animals adapt to the reduced light levels and slightly cooler temperatures. Photosynthetic organisms adjust their metabolic processes to operate more efficiently under the diffused lighting conditions, while animals modify their activity patterns to take advantage of the more even distribution of light throughout the day. These adaptations demonstrate the remarkable flexibility of biological systems when environmental changes occur slowly enough to allow evolutionary and behavioral responses. The human populations that inhabit various regions of the world begin to notice the cumulative effects of the atmospheric changes as the months pass and the modified environmental conditions become more apparent. The dimmer sunlight requires adjustments in daily activity patterns, with more time needed for tasks that depend on good visibility and more attention paid to the timing of activities that are best performed in the brightest available light. These adaptations become part of the normal rhythm of daily life as communities learn to work with the new environmental conditions. The heating and cooking activities that are central to human survival show modifications as the reduced solar radiation affects the availability of passive solar heating and the efficiency of solar drying techniques. Fire becomes even more important for maintaining comfortable temperatures in shelters, while food preservation methods must be adapted to account for the reduced effectiveness of sun drying in the dimmer light conditions. These changes require increased attention to fuel gathering and fire maintenance, but they represent manageable adaptations rather than insurmountable challenges. The psychological effects of the dimmer lighting conditions begin to manifest themselves subtly as human communities adapt to the reduced brightness of their daily environment. The softer, more diffused light creates a generally calmer and more peaceful atmosphere that many individuals find soothing and conducive to contemplative activities. The reduced glare and harsh contrasts make outdoor activities more comfortable for extended periods, while the warmer color temperature of the filtered sunlight creates a gentle, golden ambience that enhances the aesthetic quality of familiar landscapes. The navigation and tracking skills that are essential for survival in the ancient world must be adapted to account for the changed lighting conditions and the way that familiar landmarks appear under the filtered sunlight. The reduced contrast and softer shadows require more careful observation and greater reliance on subtle environmental cues, but experienced travelers find that they can adapt their techniques to maintain accurate orientation and route-finding abilities even under the modified lighting conditions. The artistic and cultural activities that enrich human life show interesting adaptations to the changed lighting environment. The warmer color palette created by the filtered sunlight inspires new approaches to cave painting and body decoration, while the softer lighting creates more intimate settings for storytelling and social activities around the evening fire. The dimmer daytime conditions extend the period when firelight provides the primary illumination for close work and social interaction. The tool-making and crafting activities that produce the essential equipment for survival must be adapted to the reduced light levels that make detailed work more challenging during what were previously the brightest parts of the day. Craftspeople learn to position their work areas to take maximum advantage of the available light while developing techniques that rely more on touch and experience than on visual precision. These adaptations lead to refinements in technique that actually improve the quality of some products. The plant gathering and hunting activities that provide sustenance for human communities show modifications as the changed environmental conditions affect both the behavior of target species and the visual cues that guide successful foraging. Gatherers learn to recognize subtle changes in plant appearance and timing that result from the modified light conditions, while hunters adapt their techniques to account for the altered activity patterns of game animals responding to the changed environment. The seasonal planning and resource management strategies that are crucial for survival must be revised to account for the modified climate patterns and their effects on resource availability. The slightly extended growing season for some plants must be balanced against the reduced productivity of sun-dependent species, while the changed timing of animal migrations and reproductive cycles requires adjustments in hunting and gathering schedules. The shelter construction and maintenance activities that provide protection from the elements must be adapted to account for the slightly cooler temperatures and the increased importance of fire for maintaining comfortable living conditions. Building techniques are modified to provide better insulation and more efficient heating, while fuel gathering becomes a higher priority as communities prepare for potentially longer periods of cool weather. The clothing and personal equipment used for protection against environmental conditions show adaptations to the cooler temperatures and the reduced effectiveness of solar heating for drying and warming. Garment designs are modified to provide better insulation while remaining suitable for the active lifestyle required by hunting and gathering subsistence strategies. The techniques used for high preparation and textile production are refined to create more effective cold weather clothing. The food preservation and storage techniques that ensure survival during periods of resource scarcity must be adapted to account for the reduced effectiveness of solar drying and the slightly increased risk of spoilage in the cooler, more humid conditions. New methods are developed that take advantage of the modified environmental conditions while maintaining the ability to store adequate food supplies for extended periods. The medical and healthcare knowledge that helps maintain community health must be expanded to address the health effects of living in the modified atmospheric conditions. Respiratory issues may become more common due to the presence of fine volcanic particles in the air, while the reduced sunlight exposure requires attention to nutritional needs that are normally met through sun exposure. Traditional medicinal practices are adapted to address these new health considerations. The social organization and decision-making processes that govern community life show adaptations to the challenges and opportunities created by the modified environmental conditions. The increased importance of cooperation and resource sharing in the face of environmental uncertainty strengthens social bonds while creating new forms of mutual support and assistance. Leadership roles may be modified to emphasize skills that are particularly valuable under the changed conditions. As the months pass and the atmospheric effects of the volcanic eruption continue to influence global climate patterns, the cumulative impact of the reduced solar radiation begins to create more noticeable changes in environmental conditions. The growing season becomes measurably shorter in some regions, while others experience enhanced cloud cover and precipitation that creates new patterns of resource availability. These changes occur slowly enough that adaptation remains possible, but they represent a fundamental shift in the environmental conditions that govern life on Earth. The global nature of the atmospheric effects ensures that human populations around the world face similar challenges, though the specific manifestations vary depending on local climate conditions and geographic factors. The shared experience of adapting to the modified environment creates common challenges that test the ingenuity and resilience of human communities everywhere, while also demonstrating the remarkable adaptability that has always characterized our species. The long-term persistence of the atmospheric effects begins to create conditions that will eventually be recognized as a significant climate event, though the changes continue to unfold gradually enough that each generation can adapt to the slowly evolving conditions. The volcanic winter that results from the Toba eruption represents not a catastrophic collapse of environmental systems, but rather a patient transformation that demonstrates both the power of natural forces and the remarkable resilience of life when changes occur slowly enough to allow adaptation and evolution. As you observe this gentle dimming of the sun and the gradual cooling of the Earth's climate, you begin to appreciate how even the most significant environmental changes can unfold in ways that emphasize adaptation and resilience, rather than destruction and catastrophe. The volcanic winter created by Toba's eruption demonstrates the remarkable capacity of natural systems to absorb and adapt to change while maintaining the fundamental processes that support life throughout the long period of environmental transformation. As the months stretch into years following the great eruption of Toba, the natural world begins to undergo a remarkable and peaceful transformation that demonstrates the extraordinary resilience and adaptability of life on Earth. What emerges is not a landscape of desolation or struggle, but rather a quietly modified world where ecosystems, plant communities, and animal populations gradually adjust their rhythms and patterns to accommodate the changed environmental conditions. This transformation unfolds with the same patience and grace that characterizes all of nature's most profound adaptations, creating new forms of beauty and balance that reflect life's endless capacity to find harmony even in the face of significant environmental change. The plant communities that form the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems begin to show remarkable adaptations to the reduced light levels and cooler temperatures that now characterize their world. Many species demonstrate an enhanced efficiency in photosynthesis, developing larger leaves or more dense chlorophyll concentrations that allow them to capture and utilize the dimmer sunlight more effectively. These adaptations occur gradually over growing seasons, as plants respond to the consistent environmental cues with genetic and physiological modifications that improve their survival and reproduction under the new conditions. The forest ecosystems that cover vast areas of the continents show particularly elegant adaptations to the modified climate regime. Deciduous trees begin to extend their growing seasons slightly, maintaining their leaves longer into the autumn period when the reduced solar radiation creates more moderate temperature conditions than in previous years. Evergreen species show enhanced tolerance for cold conditions, with many populations expanding their ranges into areas that were previously too warm for their optimal growth and reproduction. The understory vegetation and forest communities benefits significantly from the more diffused lighting conditions that penetrate the canopy more evenly than the intense, direct sunlight of previous eras. Shade-tolerant species flourish in the gentler light environment, creating lush ground cover communities that support enhanced biodiversity and provide improved habitat for small mammals, birds, and countless invertebrate species. The forest floor becomes a richer, more complex environment as the modified lighting conditions allow previously suppressed plant species to thrive. The grassland ecosystems that characterize many regions of the world show their own unique adaptations to the cooler, dimmer conditions. Many grass species develop enhanced root systems that allow them to extract nutrients more efficiently from soils that have been enriched by the mineral content of volcanic ash. The reduced evaporation rates that accompany the cooler temperatures help maintain soil moisture for longer periods, supporting more continuous plant growth throughout seasons that might previously have been limited by drought conditions. The aquatic ecosystems that exist in lakes, rivers, and wetlands demonstrate remarkable resilience to the environmental changes, with many showing enhanced productivity as the reduced temperatures slow evaporation rates and maintain more stable water levels. The fine volcanic ash that has settled into aquatic systems provides mineral nutrients that support the growth of algae and other primary producers, creating the foundation for food webs that often become more complex and productive than they were before the volcanic event. The marine ecosystems of coastal areas show subtle but significant adaptations to the modified atmospheric conditions. The reduced solar heating of ocean surfaces creates more stable thermal conditions that benefit many species of fish and marine invertebrates. Coastal upwelling systems become more efficient at bringing nutrient-rich deep water to the surface, supporting enhanced marine productivity that creates abundant food sources for seabirds, marine mammals, and human coastal populations. The animal populations that inhabit these slowly transforming ecosystems display remarkable behavioral and physiological adaptations that allow them to thrive under the new environmental conditions. Many species show modified activity patterns, taking advantage of the more comfortable daytime temperatures and extended periods of adequate lighting to expand their foraging and social activities. The reduced temperature extremes that characterize the volcanic winter create more stable and predictable environmental conditions that many animals find easier to navigate than the more variable climate of previous periods. The large herbivores that roam the grasslands and forest edges show particularly interesting adaptations to the modified vegetation communities that have developed under the new climate regime. Many species discover new food sources among plants that have become more abundant or nutritious under the changed conditions, while others modify their migration patterns to take advantage of the more stable environmental conditions that reduce the need for long-distance seasonal movements. The predator species that depend on these herbivores for their survival show corresponding adaptations in their hunting strategies and territorial behaviors. The modified activity patterns of prey species create new opportunities for successful hunting, while the enhanced vegetation cover that develops under the diffused lighting conditions provides improved stalking habitat that allows predators to approach their prey more effectively. The small mammal populations that form crucial links in many ecosystem food webs show remarkable adaptations to the changed environmental conditions. Many species develop enhanced burrowing behaviors that take advantage of the softer, ash-enriched soils while providing better protection against the slightly cooler temperatures. Others modify their food caching and storage behaviors to account for the extended periods of resource availability that result from the longer growing seasons and reduced temperature extremes. The bird populations that inhabit these transforming ecosystems display some of the most dramatic and beautiful adaptations to the new environmental conditions. Many species show modified migration patterns, with some populations choosing to remain in areas year-round that they previously vacated during seasonal temperature extremes. Others develop enhanced cold tolerance that allows them to expand their ranges into previously unsuitable habitats, creating new opportunities for feeding and nesting. The insect communities that form the foundation of many terrestrial food webs show remarkable resilience and adaptability to the changed environmental conditions. Many species benefit from a more stable temperature and humidity conditions that characterize the volcanic winter, showing enhanced survival rates and reproductive success that support larger populations and more complex community interactions. The increased plant productivity that develops under the modified climate regime provides abundant food sources that support diverse insect communities throughout extended growing seasons. The soil ecosystems that support all terrestrial life undergo profound but gentle transformations as the volcanic ash gradually becomes incorporated into existing soil systems. The mineral content of the ash provides enhanced fertility that supports more robust plant growth, while the fine texture of the volcanic particles improves soil water retention and nutrient cycling. These soil improvements occur gradually over seasons and years, creating cumulative benefits that enhance ecosystem productivity throughout the affected regions. The microbial communities that form the foundation of soil ecosystems show remarkable adaptations to the modified chemical environment created by the incorporation of volcanic ash. Many bacterial and fungal species benefit from the enhanced mineral content of ashen-rich soils, showing increased activity and diversity that support more efficient nutrient cycling and organic matter decomposition. These microbial adaptations create the foundation for enhanced ecosystem productivity that benefits all higher levels of the food web. The decomposer organisms that recycle nutrients and organic matter within ecosystems show enhanced activity under the more stable environmental conditions that characterize the volcanic winter. The reduced temperature extremes and more consistent moisture levels create optimal conditions for decomposition processes, leading to more efficient nutrient cycling that supports enhanced plant growth and ecosystem productivity. The pollinator relationships that are crucial for plant reproduction show interesting adaptations to the modified environmental conditions. Many plant species shift their flowering times to take advantage of the extended periods of moderate temperatures and adequate lighting, while pollinating insects modify their activity patterns to match these new flowering schedules. These adaptations often result in more efficient pollination and enhanced reproductive success for both plants and their pollinator partners. The seed dispersal mechanisms that enable plant reproduction and colonization of new habitats show remarkable adaptations to the changed environmental conditions. Many species develop enhanced seed production under the favorable growing conditions that result from the volcanic winter, while the modified wind patterns and animal behaviors that characterize the new climate regime create new opportunities for long-distance seed dispersal and genetic exchange between plant populations. The water cycle processes that govern ecosystem hydrology show significant modifications under the changed atmospheric conditions. The reduced evaporation rates that accompany the cooler temperatures create more stable and predictable water availability, supporting plant communities that show enhanced drought tolerance and more consistent productivity throughout growing seasons. These hydrological changes often result in the development of new wetland areas and the expansion of riparian habitats that support diverse biological communities. The carbon cycle processes that regulate atmospheric chemistry and climate show important adaptations to the modified environmental conditions. The enhanced plant productivity that develops under the favorable growing conditions of the volcanic winter leads to increased carbon sequestration in both living biomass and soil organic matter. These carbon cycle modifications help to buffer atmospheric chemistry changes and contribute to the long-term stability of the modified climate system. The nitrogen cycle processes that govern nutrient availability in ecosystems show beneficial modifications under the changed environmental conditions. The volcanic ash provides mineral nutrients that enhance nitrogen cycling efficiency, while the more stable environmental conditions support enhanced microbial activity that increases the availability of nitrogen compounds for plant uptake. These nitrogen cycle improvements contribute to the enhanced ecosystem productivity that characterizes many regions during the volcanic winter. The succession processes that govern ecosystem development and recovery from disturbance show accelerated progression under the favorable environmental conditions created by the volcanic winter. Areas that have been disturbed by natural events or human activities show rapid revegetation and community development, often achieving greater diversity and stability than existed before the disturbance. These accelerated succession processes demonstrate the remarkable resilience of natural systems when environmental conditions favor biological activity and growth. The biodiversity patterns that characterize different ecosystems show generally positive responses to the environmental changes associated with the volcanic winter. Many regions experience increased species richness and abundance as the more stable environmental conditions and enhanced resource availability support larger and more diverse biological communities. These biodiversity increases often result from the successful establishment of species that were previously limited by environmental stress or resource competition. The food web structures that characterize ecosystem communities show increased complexity and stability under the modified environmental conditions. The enhanced primary productivity that develops under the favorable growing conditions of the volcanic winter supports larger herbivore populations, which in turn support more diverse and abundant predator communities. These more complex food webs often show greater resilience to environmental perturbations and enhanced efficiency in energy and nutrient cycling. The habitat connectivity that is crucial for maintaining healthy wildlife populations shows improvements under the environmental conditions of the volcanic winter. The enhanced vegetation growth that characterizes many regions creates expanded habitat areas and improved corridors for animal movement, facilitating genetic exchange between populations and supporting more stable and resilient wildlife communities. These connectivity improvements often result in the re-establishment of species in areas where they had previously been eliminated by environmental stress or habitat fragmentation. The ecological services provided by natural ecosystems show enhanced efficiency and effectiveness under the modified environmental conditions. Water purification processes benefit from the improved soil conditions and enhanced vegetation cover that develop during the volcanic winter, while carbon sequestration services are enhanced by the increased plant productivity and soil organic matter accumulation that characterize many regions. These ecological service improvements contribute to the overall environmental quality and sustainability of the transformed landscapes. The phenological patterns that govern the timing of biological events show adaptive modifications that optimize organism responses to the changed environmental conditions. Plant flowering and fruiting schedules are adjusted to take advantage of the extended periods of favorable growing conditions, while animal reproduction and migration cycles are modified to correspond with the new patterns of resource availability and environmental stability. The evolutionary processes that drive long-term biological adaptation show evidence of positive selection for traits that enhance survival and reproduction under the environmental conditions of the volcanic winter. Many populations develop enhanced cold tolerance, improve efficiency in resource utilization, and modified behaviors that take advantage of the new environmental opportunities. These evolutionary adaptations contribute to the long-term success of species and ecosystems in the transformed world. As you observe these remarkable transformations unfolding across the natural world, you begin to appreciate how life demonstrates its most fundamental characteristic: the ability to adapt, evolve, and thrive even in the face of significant environmental change. The quiet transformation that occurs during the volcanic winter represents not a time of struggle and hardship, but rather a period of creative adaptation that demonstrates the remarkable resilience and flexibility that characterizes all living systems. The beauty of this transformation lies in its gradual, peaceful nature, which allows organisms and ecosystems time to develop appropriate responses to the changed conditions rather than being overwhelmed by sudden catastrophic change. The volcanic winter becomes a time of innovation and adaptation that strengthens the foundations of life and creates new forms of biological diversity and ecosystem complexity that enhance the overall richness and stability of the natural world. as the environmental changes brought by the volcanic winter gradually reshaped the natural world. The small human communities scattered across the Earth's continents begin to demonstrate the remarkable ingenuity and adaptability that has always characterized our species. What emerges during this period is not a desperate struggle for survival, but rather a patient and creative exploration of new ways to live comfortably and safely within the transformed environment. The human response to the challenges of the longest winter becomes a testament to our ancestors' wisdom, cooperation, and deep understanding of the natural world that sustained them through countless generations of environmental change. The most immediate and practical responses to the cooling climate center around the creation of more effective shelters that can maintain comfortable living conditions even as outdoor temperatures become less predictable and generally cooler than in previous years. Human communities begin to experiment with new construction techniques that take advantage of the insulating properties of the volcanic ash that has accumulated around their living areas. This fine, powdery material, when mixed with traditional building materials like animal hides and plant fibers, creates composite structures that provide significantly enhanced protection against cold and wind. The cave systems that have always served as important shelter sites for human groups become even more valuable during the volcanic winter, as their natural thermal stability provides reliable protection against temperature fluctuations. Communities that have access to suitable caves begin to modify these natural shelters with carefully constructed windbreaks and entrance barriers that control airflow while maintaining adequate ventilation for the fires that provide light and warmth. These cave modifications often involve sophisticated engineering techniques that demonstrate detailed understanding of airflow dynamics and heat conservation principles. The construction of semi-subterranean shelters becomes increasingly common as groups discover that partially buried structures maintain more stable internal temperatures than surface dwellings. These earth-sheltered homes are excavated into hillsides or constructed in shallow depressions that are then covered with carefully arranged layers of organic materials, animal hides, and volcanic ash. The thermal mass provided by the surrounding earth creates natural temperature regulation that keeps these shelters comfortable even during the coolest periods of the volcanic winter. The design of portable shelters undergoes significant innovation as nomadic groups develop new techniques for creating warm, comfortable temporary housing that can be erected quickly at new campsites. These improved portable shelters often incorporate multiple layers of insulation using whatever materials are locally available, from carefully prepared animal furs to woven plant fibers to the ubiquitous volcanic ash that has become a valuable building material throughout the affected regions. The heating systems that are essential for maintaining comfortable living conditions show remarkable innovations as communities develop more efficient methods for generating, conserving, and distributing heat within their shelters. Fire hearths are redesigned with improved ventilation systems that maximize heat output while minimizing fuel consumption and smoke problems. Heat storage techniques are developed that use stones, earth, or other thermal mass materials to capture and slowly release heat from fires, extending the warming effect long after the flames have died down. The fuel gathering and management activities that support these heating systems become more systematic and sophisticated as communities recognize the increased importance of maintaining adequate fuel supplies throughout the extended cool periods. Wood gathering expeditions are organized more carefully to ensure sustainable harvesting of forest resources, while alternative fuel sources like dried grasses, animal dung, and fat-rich materials are systematically collected and stored for use during periods when traditional fuels are scarce. The clothing and personal protection systems used by individuals undergo significant improvements as people develop new techniques for creating warmer, more effective garments using available materials. Multi-layer clothing systems are developed that provide excellent insulation while maintaining the flexibility needed for active outdoor work. The preparation of animal hides becomes more sophisticated, with new tanning and treatment techniques that create softer, more insulating materials that provide better protection against cold and moisture. The food storage and preservation systems that ensure adequate nutrition throughout the volcanic winter show remarkable innovations as communities develop new methods for maintaining food quality and nutritional value under the changed environmental conditions. Root cellars and underground storage chambers are constructed that take advantage of the stable soil temperatures to keep foods fresh for extended periods. Smoking and drying techniques are refined to work effectively in the dimmer, cooler conditions that characterize the volcanic winter environment. The water procurement and management systems that provide this essential resource become more sophisticated as communities develop new techniques for locating, collecting, and storing adequate water supplies. The slightly increased precipitation that characterizes many regions during the volcanic winter creates new opportunities for water collection, leading to the development of improved rainwater harvesting systems and more efficient storage methods. Springs and other natural water sources are carefully managed to ensure sustainable use throughout the extended cool periods. The tool-making and equipment production activities that provide essential implements for survival show significant innovations as craftspeople develop new techniques that work effectively under the reduced lighting conditions. Workshop areas are designed to maximize the use of available light, often incorporating reflective surfaces and carefully positioned fire hearths to provide adequate illumination for detailed work. Tool designs are modified to be more effective in the cooler conditions, with particular attention to creating implements that perform well in the slightly different environmental conditions of the volcanic winter. The medical and healthcare systems that maintain community health become more sophisticated as groups develop new treatments and preventive measures for health issues that may be associated with the changed environmental conditions. Respiratory health receives particular attention as communities develop techniques for minimizing exposure to fine volcanic particles while maintaining adequate ventilation in shelters. Nutritional knowledge is expanded to ensure that dietary needs are met despite potential changes in food availability and quality. The social organization systems that govern community life show adaptations that emphasize cooperation and mutual support during the challenges of the volcanic winter. Decision-making processes often become more collaborative as communities recognize the importance of pooling knowledge and resources to develop effective responses to environmental challenges. Leadership roles may be modified to emphasize skills that are particularly valuable during periods of environmental stress, such as expertise in shelter construction, fuel management, or food preservation. The work organization and task allocation systems within communities become more systematic as groups develop efficient methods for accomplishing the increased workload associated with maintaining comfortable living conditions during the volcanic winter. Specialized roles may emerge for activities like fuel gathering, food processing, and shelter maintenance, while cooperative work groups are organized to tackle larger projects that require coordinated effort from multiple community members. The communication and coordination systems that connect different human groups become more important as communities recognize the value of sharing information about successful adaptations and survival techniques. Trade relationships may be modified to emphasize the exchange of materials and knowledge that are particularly valuable during the volcanic winter, while social networks are strengthened to provide mutual support and assistance during challenging periods. The childcare and education systems that ensure the transmission of cultural knowledge show adaptations that emphasize the teaching of skills that are particularly important during periods of environmental challenge. Children learn enhanced versions of traditional survival skills, with particular emphasis on techniques for maintaining warmth, finding and preparing food, and contributing to community welfare during difficult periods. The extended time spent in shelters during the cooler conditions provides increased opportunities for intensive skill transmission and cultural education. The entertainment and cultural activities that enrich human life show modifications that take advantage of the increased time spent in close social contact within shelters. Storytelling traditions may be expanded to include accounts of successful adaptation to environmental challenges, while artistic activities like carving, painting, and ornament making benefit from the increased time available for creative pursuits during the longer periods spent indoors. The planning and resource management systems that ensure long-term survival become more sophisticated as communities develop improved methods for anticipating needs and organizing resources for extended periods of challenging conditions. Seasonal planning cycles are modified to account for the changed environmental patterns, while resource allocation systems are refined to ensure equitable distribution of essential materials and supplies throughout the community. The territory and land use management systems that govern human relationships with the natural environment show adaptations that emphasize sustainable use of resources during periods when natural productivity may be reduced. Hunting and gathering activities are organized more carefully to ensure that animal and plant populations are not depleted during the challenging conditions of the volcanic winter, while new resource sources are identified and incorporated into traditional subsistence systems. The spiritual and ceremonial activities that provide meaning and social cohesion within communities often show increased emphasis on themes of adaptation, resilience, and harmony with natural cycles. Ceremonies may be developed that celebrate successful adaptations to environmental challenges, while spiritual practices often emphasize the importance of cooperation, sharing, and mutual support during difficult periods. The conflict resolution and social control systems that maintain community harmony become more important as the increased social contact and resource sharing associated with the volcanic winter create new opportunities for interpersonal tension. Mediation techniques are refined to address disputes that may arise from the increased interdependence and cooperation required for successful adaptation to environmental challenges, while social norms are reinforced that emphasize the importance of community welfare over individual interests. The innovation and experimentation processes that drive technological and social adaptation show increased activity as communities actively seek new solutions to the challenges posed by the volcanic winter. Experimental approaches to shelter construction, food processing, and resource management are encouraged and systematically evaluated, while successful innovations are rapidly shared throughout the community and with neighboring groups. The observation and monitoring systems that track environmental conditions become more systematic as communities recognize the importance of understanding and predicting environmental changes. Weather patterns, resource availability, and animal behavior are monitored more carefully to provide early warning of changing conditions, while traditional ecological knowledge is expanded to incorporate new understanding of environmental processes and relationships. The trade and exchange systems that connect communities with distant groups show modifications that emphasize the sharing of materials and knowledge that are particularly valuable during the volcanic winter. Trade routes may be adjusted to account for changed environmental conditions, while new trade relationships are established with groups that have developed effective adaptation techniques or have access to resources that are particularly valuable during challenging periods. The population and demographic management systems that govern community size and composition show adaptations that optimize group survival during challenging environmental conditions. Community sizes may be adjusted to match available resources and shelter capacity, while kinship and marriage systems are utilized to maintain genetic diversity and strengthen social bonds during periods when cooperation and mutual support are particularly important. As you observe these remarkable human adaptations to the challenges of the volcanic winter, you begin to appreciate the extraordinary creativity and resilience that our ancestors brought to the task of surviving and thriving in a transformed world. Their responses demonstrate not desperate improvisation, but rather the systematic application of deep knowledge and sophisticated problem-solving skills to the development of comfortable and sustainable ways of life under challenging environmental conditions. The innovations that emerge from this period of adaptation represent important advances in human technology and social organization that will continue to benefit future generations long after the volcanic winter has ended. The techniques for shelter construction, food preservation, and resource management that are developed during this time become part of the permanent toolkit of human survival skills, enhancing the ability of our species to adapt to environmental challenges throughout our subsequent history. The cooperative spirit and social innovations that characterize human responses to the volcanic winter demonstrate the fundamental importance of community cooperation and mutual support in ensuring human survival and prosperity. The social systems that emerge from this period emphasize sharing, collaboration, and collective problem-solving in ways that strengthen the social foundation of human communities and enhance their resilience to future environmental challenges. The peaceful and patient nature of these human adaptations reflects the gradual onset of the environmental changes associated with the volcanic winter, which provides adequate time for thoughtful experimentation and systematic development of effective solutions. Rather than being overwhelmed by sudden catastrophic change, human communities are able to respond with careful planning and creative innovation that demonstrates the remarkable adaptability that has always characterized our species. As the volcanic winter settles into its long, gentle rhythm across the transformed landscapes of Earth, the human communities that have successfully adapted to the changed environmental conditions begin to develop perhaps the most important survival skill of all, the art of patience. What emerges during this extended period of cooler temperatures and dimmer skies is not restless anxiety or desperate urgency, but rather a profound understanding of the value of waiting, watching, and moving through life according to the slower rhythms that now govern their world. This patience becomes both a practical necessity and a source of deep wisdom that enriches every aspect of human experience during the longest winter. The daily rhythms of life in human communities begin to follow the gentler pace that the environmental conditions seem to encourage and reward. The dimmer sunlight and cooler temperatures create natural incentives for slower, more deliberate movement through daily activities, while the enhanced importance of fuel conservation and resource management requires more careful planning and execution of even the simplest tasks. These changes in daily rhythm are not experienced as restrictions or hardships, but rather as opportunities to discover new depths of awareness and appreciation for the simple activities that sustain life. The work patterns that govern community activities show adaptations that emphasize quality over speed, thoroughness over efficiency, and careful observation over hasty action. Tool-making activities, for example, become more contemplative processes where craftspeople take advantage of the extended indoor time to create implements of exceptional quality and durability. The reduced light levels that make detailed work more challenging also create opportunities for developing enhanced tactile skills and deeper understanding of materials and techniques. The food preparation and cooking activities that are central to community life become more elaborate and ritualized as the extended time spent around fires provides opportunities for developing more sophisticated culinary traditions. The processing of plant foods becomes a more contemplative activity where the subtle flavors and nutritional qualities of different species are explored more thoroughly. Cooking techniques are refined through patient experimentation that takes advantage of the stable fire conditions and extended meal preparation times. The storytelling traditions that preserve cultural knowledge and provide entertainment during the long evenings become more elaborate and sophisticated as communities have increased time for developing and sharing complex narratives. Stories that might have been told briefly during the busy seasons of previous years are expanded into epic tales that can occupy entire evenings, with detailed descriptions of characters, landscapes, and events that demonstrate the narrator's skill and the audience's appreciation for carefully crafted entertainment. The observational skills that are essential for survival in the natural world become more acute and refined as the slower pace of life provides opportunities for more careful and systematic attention to environmental patterns and changes. Weather prediction techniques become more sophisticated as observers have time to notice subtle correlations between atmospheric conditions and subsequent weather patterns. Animal behavior is studied more carefully, leading to enhanced understanding of seasonal cycles and feeding patterns that improve hunting and gathering success. The social interactions within communities become more nuanced and complex as the increased time spent in close contact provides opportunities for developing deeper understanding of individual personalities and group dynamics. Conflict resolution techniques become more sophisticated as community members develop enhanced skills in communication, mediation, and consensus building. Leadership styles often become more collaborative and inclusive as the extended decision-making time allows for more thorough discussion of community issues. The educational activities that transmit essential knowledge to younger community members become more comprehensive and detailed as the longer indoor periods provide extended opportunities for intensive skill instruction. Children learn not just the basic techniques for survival activities, but also the subtle variations and advanced applications that can only be transmitted through patient, one-on-one instruction. The apprenticeship relationships between skilled adults and learning youth become deeper and more meaningful as both participants have adequate time to develop strong working relationships. The artistic and creative activities that enrich human culture flourish under the conditions that encourage contemplative, detailed work. Cave painting traditions become more sophisticated as artists have time to experiment with different pigments, techniques, and compositional approaches. Personal ornament creation becomes more elaborate as craftspeople explore the aesthetic possibilities of available materials. Musical traditions may develop as people experiment with creating instruments and songs that enhance the social atmosphere during long evenings around the fire. The spiritual and contemplative practices that provide meaning and connection to the larger world often show significant development during periods when the slower pace of life encourages deeper reflection and meditation. The relationship between human communities and the natural world may be explored more thoroughly through ceremonial activities that celebrate the interdependence between people and their environment. Personal spiritual practices may develop that help individuals find peace and purpose during extended periods of environmental challenge. The planning and preparation activities that ensure community survival become more systematic and far-sighted as the extended time horizon of the volcanic winter encourages longer-term thinking and more careful resource allocation. Seasonal planning cycles are expanded to cover multiple years rather than single seasons, while resource management strategies are developed that account for the possibility of extended periods of challenging environmental conditions. The maintenance and repair activities that keep essential equipment in good working order become more thorough and preventive as communities recognize the importance of maintaining their material culture in excellent condition during periods when replacement materials may be difficult to obtain. Tools, clothing, and shelter components receive more careful attention and more frequent maintenance, often resulting in longer-lasting and more reliable equipment that serves the community more effectively. The exploration and scouting activities that provide information about environmental conditions and resource availability become more systematic and comprehensive as communities develop more sophisticated methods for monitoring their territory and surroundings. Scouting expeditions are planned more carefully to gather maximum information with minimum risk, while the intelligence gathered is analyzed more thoroughly to provide better guidance for community decision-making. The trade and communication activities that connect communities with neighboring groups become more elaborate and meaningful as the extended time available for social contact allows for the development of deeper relationships and more complex exchange systems. Trade expeditions may be planned more carefully to maximize both material exchange and social interaction, while diplomatic relationships with neighboring groups may be strengthened through more frequent and meaningful contact. The record-keeping and information management systems that preserve important knowledge become more sophisticated as communities develop improved methods for storing and retrieving essential information. Memory techniques are refined to preserve larger amounts of detailed information, while physical record-keeping systems using portable objects or markings may be developed to supplement oral traditions. Map-making and navigation skills often show significant improvement as communities have time to develop more accurate and detailed knowledge of their territorial geography. The health and medical care systems that maintain community wellness become more comprehensive and preventive as the extended time available for healthcare activities allows for more thorough attention to individual health needs. Diagnostic skills become more refined as healers have time to observe and analyze health conditions more carefully. Preventive care practices are developed that help maintain community health during extended periods of potential environmental stress. The resource processing and manufacturing activities that create essential materials and supplies become more efficient and productive as communities develop improved techniques for working with available raw materials. Hide processing techniques may be refined to create higher quality leather and fur products. Fiber processing and textile production may show innovations that create warmer, more durable clothing and bedding materials. Stone tool production may advance to create more specialized and effective implements. The experimental and innovation activities that drive technological and social progress become more systematic and productive as communities have time to carefully test new ideas and evaluate their effectiveness. Construction techniques are refined through careful experimentation and evaluation. Food preservation methods are improved through systematic testing of different approaches. Social organization systems are modified and evaluated to determine the most effective approaches to community governance and cooperation. The contemplative and philosophical activities that help humans understand their place in the world often flourish during periods when the slower pace of life encourages deeper reflection on fundamental questions about existence, purpose, and meaning. The relationship between human consciousness and the natural world may be explored more thoroughly, leading to enhanced understanding of ecological relationships and environmental ethics. The development of more sophisticated belief systems and worldviews often occurs during periods when communities have time for extended discussion and reflection on philosophical questions. As the months and years of the volcanic winter continue to unfold with their gentle but persistent rhythm, the human communities that have mastered the art of patience find that their lives become richer, deeper, and more meaningful than they might have been under the faster-paced conditions of previous eras. The enforced slower rhythm of life creates opportunities for developing skills, relationships, and understanding that might not have emerged under more hurried conditions. The wisdom that develops from practicing patience during challenging times becomes a permanent part of the cultural heritage of these communities, providing valuable guidance for future generations who may face their own environmental challenges. The techniques for maintaining morale, cooperation, and productivity during extended periods of difficulty become part of the essential survival knowledge that is passed down through oral traditions and practical instruction. The resilience that emerges from successfully navigating the challenges of the volcanic winter demonstrates the remarkable capacity of human communities to adapt not just their technology and social organization, but also their fundamental approach to living and working together. The art of patience becomes a form of cultural technology that enhances the survival and prosperity of human groups, while also enriching the quality of individual and community life. The peaceful acceptance of the slower rhythms imposed by environmental conditions represents a form of ecological wisdom that recognizes the value of adapting human activities to natural cycles rather than attempting to impose artificial rhythms on natural systems. This harmony between human culture and environmental conditions creates a sustainable approach to survival that can be maintained indefinitely without depleting or degrading the natural resources upon which human communities depend. As the volcanic winter deepens and the dimmed sunlight continues to filter through the ash-laden atmosphere, something remarkable begins to emerge within the small human communities scattered across the transformed landscapes of Earth. Rather than isolation or despair in the face of environmental challenge, what develops is an extraordinary flowering of cooperation, mutual support, and social innovation that demonstrates the fundamental strength of human bonds. The reduced daylight and cooler temperatures that characterize this period create natural incentives for people to spend more time together, sharing resources, knowledge, and companionship in ways that strengthen the social fabric of their communities and create new forms of collective resilience. The physical proximity that results from the increased time spent in shared shelters creates opportunities for deeper social relationships and more sophisticated forms of cooperation than might have developed under the more dispersed living patterns of warmer periods. Families and community groups that might have spent much of their time in individual activities during the abundant seasons of previous years now find themselves working together on shared projects that benefit everyone. The firelight that provides illumination during the long evenings becomes a natural gathering point where community members share stories, plan activities, and strengthen the social bonds that hold their groups together. The resource-sharing systems that develop during this period show remarkable sophistication and fairness, as communities recognize that the survival and prosperity of each individual depends on the welfare of the group as a whole. Food supplies are managed through cooperative systems that ensure equitable distribution while also maintaining adequate reserves for unexpected challenges. Fuel gathering becomes a community activity where the work is shared among all capable members while the benefits are distributed according to need rather than individual contribution. The collective problem-solving approaches that emerge during the volcanic winter demonstrate the enhanced creativity and effectiveness that results from combining the knowledge and skills of multiple individuals. Technical challenges like shelter construction or tool repair become group activities, where experienced craftspeople work alongside learners to accomplish tasks more efficiently while simultaneously transmitting essential skills to the next generation. The different perspectives and areas of expertise represented within each community are systematically utilized to develop innovative solutions to the challenges posed by the changing environment. The decision-making processes that govern community life become more inclusive and participatory as groups recognize the value of incorporating diverse viewpoints and experiences into their planning and policy development. Consensus-building techniques are refined to ensure that all community members have opportunities to contribute their knowledge and opinions to important decisions, while conflict resolution methods are developed that maintain group harmony even when disagreements arise about the best approaches to challenging situations. The childcare and education systems that ensure the transmission of cultural knowledge become more comprehensive and effective as the increased time spent in close contact provides enhanced opportunities for intensive instruction and skill development. Children benefit from exposure to a wider range of adult role models and teachers, while the community as a whole benefits from the systematic development of skilled and knowledgeable young people who will carry forward the cultural traditions and survival techniques that have proven successful during the volcanic winter. The elderly and disabled community members who might face challenges in contributing to some types of physical work find new roles and opportunities to contribute their knowledge, experience, and skills to community welfare. The increased emphasis on indoor activities and detailed craftswork creates opportunities for individuals with limited mobility to make important contributions to community survival and prosperity. The wisdom and experience of older community members becomes even more valuable as groups face the novel challenges of adapting to environmental change. The communication and information sharing systems that operate within and between communities become more sophisticated and effective as groups develop improved methods for transmitting important knowledge and coordinating activities. Storytelling traditions are utilized not just for entertainment, but also for preserving and sharing technical knowledge, environmental observations, and successful adaptation strategies. Trade relationships with neighboring groups often include significant components of information exchange that help all participating communities benefit from innovations and discoveries made by others. The specialization of roles and responsibilities within communities becomes more pronounced as groups discover the benefits of having individuals focus on particular areas of expertise while contributing to overall community welfare. Craft specialists may emerge who focus on activities like tool making, hide processing, or food preservation, while others specialize in activities like scouting, hunting, or plant gathering. These specialized roles are balanced with continued participation in general community activities to maintain social cohesion and ensure that essential knowledge is widely distributed. The ceremonial and ritual activities that strengthen community bonds and provide meaning and purpose during challenging times often show significant development during the volcanic winter. Celebrations that mark successful adaptations, seasonal transitions, or important community achievements help maintain morale and reinforce the social values that support cooperation and mutual assistance. These ceremonial activities often incorporate elements that acknowledge the challenges of the environmental situation while emphasizing the strength and resilience of the community. The conflict prevention and resolution mechanisms that maintain harmony within closely integrated communities become more sophisticated and effective as groups develop enhanced understanding of the social dynamics that can lead to tension and disagreement. Mediation techniques are refined to address disputes before they escalate into serious conflicts, while social norms and expectations are clarified to provide clear guidance about appropriate behavior and community responsibility. The work organization systems that coordinate community activities become more efficient and equitable as groups develop improved methods for allocating tasks and responsibilities among community members. Cooperative work groups are organized for major projects like shelter construction or fuel gathering, while daily maintenance activities are distributed among community members according to ability and availability. These work organization systems often emphasize rotation of responsibilities to ensure that all community members develop diverse skills and experience. The mutual aid and support systems that help individuals and families cope with personal challenges become more comprehensive and systematic as communities recognize the importance of maintaining the health and welfare of all members. Care for the sick or injured becomes a community responsibility, while families facing temporary difficulties receive assistance that helps them maintain their contributions to community welfare. These support systems create safety nets that enhance the security and stability of all community members. The innovation and experimentation activities that drive technological and social progress become more collaborative and systematic as communities pool their creative resources to develop solutions to shared challenges. New techniques for food preservation, shelter construction, or tool making are developed through cooperative experimentation, where multiple individuals contribute ideas and evaluate results. Successful innovations are quickly shared throughout the community and often transmitted to neighboring groups through trade and social contact. The cultural and artistic activities that enrich community life flourish under the conditions that encourage creativity and provide time for developing sophisticated forms of expression. Collaborative artistic projects may emerge where multiple community members contribute their skills to creating elaborate decorative objects or ceremonial items. Musical traditions often develop as people discover the social benefits of group singing and rhythm-making activities that enhance community bonding and provide entertainment during long evening gatherings. The leadership development and succession planning systems that ensure continuity of effective community governance become more sophisticated as groups recognize the importance of preparing multiple individuals to take on leadership responsibilities. Leadership roles may be distributed among several community members with different areas of expertise, while younger individuals are systematically prepared to assume leadership responsibilities as they gain experience and demonstrate competence. The trade and exchange relationships that connect communities with neighboring groups often become more collaborative and mutually beneficial as the challenges of the volcanic winter create recognition of the value of intergroup cooperation. Trade relationships may evolve to include mutual aid agreements where communities provide assistance to each other during difficult periods, while marriage and kinship networks are strengthened to create larger support systems that span multiple communities. The territorial and resource management systems that govern community relationships with their environment become more collaborative and sustainable as groups recognize the importance of maintaining the long-term productivity of their resource base. Hunting and gathering activities are coordinated to prevent overexploitation of local resources, while territorial boundaries may be adjusted through negotiation to ensure that all communities have access to adequate resources for survival and prosperity. The record-keeping and information management systems that preserve important community knowledge become more systematic and comprehensive as groups develop improved methods for storing and retrieving essential information. Memory techniques are enhanced to preserve larger amounts of technical and social knowledge, while physical record-keeping systems may be developed to supplement oral traditions and provide backup storage for critical information. As you observe these remarkable developments in human social organization and cooperation, you begin to appreciate how the challenges of the volcanic winter serve as catalysts for innovations in community life that create stronger, more resilient, and more harmonious human societies. The darkness that might have isolated individuals instead brings them together in ways that enhance both individual welfare and collective prosperity. The social innovations that emerge during this period become permanent features of human culture that continue to benefit communities long after the environmental challenges have passed. The techniques for cooperation, resource sharing, and collective problem solving that are developed during the volcanic winter provide valuable models for future generations facing their own challenges and opportunities. The sense of community identity and solidarity that develops during periods of shared challenge creates social bonds that strengthen the cultural foundation of human societies and enhance their resilience to future environmental and social stresses. The recognition that individual welfare depends on community welfare becomes a fundamental principle that guides social organization and individual behavior throughout subsequent human history. The peaceful and cooperative nature of these social adaptations demonstrates that human communities can respond to environmental challenges in ways that strengthen rather than weaken their social fabric, creating more cohesive and effective societies that are better able to ensure the survival and prosperity of all their members. As the volcanic winter continues its long, gentle course across the Earth, stretching through months and then years of cooler temperatures and dimmed sunlight, subtle signs begin to appear that suggest the patient rhythm of environmental recovery is slowly beginning. These first hints of change are so gradual and peaceful that they blend seamlessly into the natural variations that have characterized the transformed world, yet they carry within them the promise of eventual return to brighter skies and warmer seasons. What emerges is not a sudden dramatic shift, but rather the most gentle possible beginning of the long journey back toward the environmental conditions that existed before Toba's great eruption. The first signs of atmospheric clearing appear as barely perceptible changes in the quality of sunlight that filters through the volcanic haze. Observers who have grown accustomed to the soft, diffused lighting of the volcanic winter begin to notice that the sun occasionally appears slightly brighter, its disk marginally more defined against the gray-white sky. These moments of enhanced clarity last only briefly at first, perhaps occurring for a few minutes during the clearest weather conditions, but they represent the beginning of the slow process by which the atmosphere gradually clears itself of the finest volcanic particles. The color quality of sunlight shows subtle shifts as the atmospheric particles that have created the warm, golden lighting of the volcanic winter begin to thin in concentration. The oranges and reds that have characterized daylight slowly give way to hints of the yellows and whites that characterize normal solar illumination. These color changes occur so gradually that they might be attributed to seasonal variations or changing weather patterns, yet they represent important indicators of the ongoing atmospheric recovery process. The temperature patterns that have remained consistently cooler than pre-eruption conditions begin to show subtle modifications that suggest the slow warming trend that will eventually restore normal climate conditions. The daily temperature ranges show slight increases in maximum temperatures, while the seasonal temperature cycles begin to show enhanced warming during what would normally be the warmest periods of the year. These temperature changes remain well within the range of normal climatic variation, but they represent the early stages of the recovery process. The plant communities that have adapted so successfully to the conditions of the volcanic winter begin to show responses that indicate their sensitivity to the subtle environmental changes occurring around them. Some species that have modified their growth patterns during the period of reduced solar radiation begin to show signs of returning to their pre-eruption phenology. Flowering times may shift slightly earlier in the season, while fruiting cycles show modifications that suggest plants are responding to gradually increasing light levels and slightly warmer temperatures. The animal populations that have thrived under the stable environmental conditions of the volcanic winter begin to display behavioral changes that suggest they are responding to subtle environmental cues that indicate changing conditions. Bird migration patterns may show slight modifications in timing or route selection, while mammalian activity patterns display adjustments that reflect the gradually changing photoperiod and temperature regimes. These behavioral changes are often so subtle that they require careful observation to detect, but they represent important indicators of ecosystem-level responses to environmental change. The atmospheric circulation patterns that have been modified by the presence of volcanic particles in the stratosphere begin to show gradual changes as the particle concentrations slowly decrease over time. Wind patterns may show subtle shifts in strength or direction, while storm systems display minor modifications in their development and movement patterns. These circulation changes contribute to the gradual clearing of the atmosphere, while also beginning to restore the normal patterns of heat and moisture transport that characterize pre-eruption climate conditions. The precipitation patterns that have been modified by the altered atmospheric conditions begin to show gradual changes that suggest the slow return toward normal hydrological cycles. Some regions may experience slight increases in rainfall as the atmospheric circulation patterns gradually normalize, while others may show modifications in the seasonal timing of precipitation that reflects the changing atmospheric conditions. These precipitation changes contribute to the gradual environmental recovery while also providing enhanced water resources for plant and animal communities. The human communities that have successfully adapted to the conditions of the volcanic winter begin to notice these subtle signs of environmental change through their careful observation of natural patterns and cycles. Weather prediction techniques that have been refined during the volcanic winter allow experienced observers to detect the gradual changes in atmospheric conditions that indicate the beginning of recovery. Animal behavior patterns that have been monitored throughout the volcanic winter provide additional indicators of changing environmental conditions. The psychological effects of these early signs of recovery begin to manifest themselves within human communities as people respond to the subtle but positive changes in their environment. The slightly brighter sunlight and gradually warming temperatures create a sense of optimism and anticipation that enhances community morale and strengthens social bonds. The recognition that the challenging conditions are slowly beginning to improve reinforces the value of the patience and cooperation that have sustained communities throughout the volcanic winter. The planning and preparation activities within human communities begin to incorporate anticipation of the gradual environmental recovery that appears to be beginning. Resource management strategies are adjusted to account for the possibility of gradually improving environmental conditions, while community activities are planned to take advantage of the enhanced opportunities that may become available as recovery proceeds. These planning activities demonstrate the forward-thinking approach that has characterized human responses throughout the volcanic winter. As the years of the volcanic winter gradually give way to the slow but steady process of atmospheric and climatic recovery, the human communities that have survived and thrived during this period of environmental challenge begin to emerge into a world that is both familiar and fundamentally transformed by their experience. What unfolds is not a sudden return to previous conditions, but rather a gentle transition into a new phase of human existence that carries forward the wisdom, skills, and social innovations that were developed during the longest winter. The recovery process occurs with the same patient rhythm that characterized the original environmental changes, allowing communities to adapt gradually to improving conditions while maintaining the valuable adaptations they have developed. The technological innovations that were developed during the volcanic winter continue to prove their value as environmental conditions gradually improve. The enhanced shelter construction techniques remain useful for providing comfortable living conditions during normal seasonal variations, while the improved food preservation and storage methods continue to enhance food security throughout the annual cycle. The refined tool-making techniques and equipment designs that were developed under challenging conditions often prove superior to previous technologies and become permanent additions to the human technological toolkit. The social innovations and cooperative systems that emerged during the period of environmental challenge continue to strengthen and enrich human communities as they adapt to improving conditions. The resource-sharing systems that ensured survival during difficult times evolve into more sophisticated economic and social structures that enhance community prosperity and individual welfare. The decision-making processes and conflict resolution techniques that were refined during the volcanic winter provide valuable foundations for more complex and effective forms of community governance. The knowledge and skills that were developed through careful observation and experimentation during the volcanic winter become permanent components of human cultural heritage that enhance the ability of future generations to understand and adapt to environmental challenges. The enhanced understanding of weather patterns, ecosystem dynamics, and resource management that was gained through necessity during the challenging period provides valuable guidance for sustainable living practices that can be maintained indefinitely without depleting natural resources. The resilience and adaptability that were demonstrated during the volcanic winter become defining characteristics of human communities that enhance their ability to respond effectively to future environmental and social challenges. The confidence and competence that were developed through successfully navigating the longest winter provides psychological and cultural foundations that strengthen human societies and enhance their ability to thrive under diverse conditions. As you drift peacefully through this gentle story of human survival and adaptation, carried by the same patient currents that sustained our ancestors through their greatest environmental challenge, you can rest in the knowledge that the capacity for resilience, cooperation, and creative adaptation that carried them through the longest winter continues to flow through every human community today. The wisdom they gained through patience and the strength they found through cooperation remain part of our shared heritage, demonstrating that even the greatest challenges can become opportunities for growth, learning, and the development of deeper connections between people and with a natural world that sustains us all. Sleep now, knowing that you carry within yourself the same remarkable capacity for adaptation and resilience that enabled our ancestors to not just survive, but to thrive and grow stronger during Earth's longest winter. Let the gentle rhythm of their patient endurance and quiet cooperation carry you into peaceful dreams, where the warmth of human community and the wisdom of ages past provide comfort and reassurance through any darkness, no matter how long it may last.